What's up guys, JP back at you once again, bringing you guys another video. So today's video is going to be part number 6 in every movie I watched in the year 2020, which is a video series in which I talk about and list off every movie that I watched in the year 2020. And if you're unfamiliar with the series, definitely go back and check out January through May. I think it's a pretty fun little series. And we'll continue on here with June. This is the 6th video in the series, halfway through at this point. June was not a crazy month for me, definitely not my most watched. It's a little bit more reserved from the last month. I only watched 43 movies in the month of June. Not too bad, it's still over 1 a day, but not nearly the 2 a day that I was doing. So anyway, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into June of 2020. Just a little side note, I am using the Letterboxd rating system. I normally rate out of 10, but Letterboxd is right in front of me and it's a lot easier. That's how I have everything listed off. Shout out to Letterboxd, they're great because if you don't have a Letterboxd, get one because it's a really fun way to keep track of the movies you watch, and it's fun to see what everybody else is watching. It's sort of like a social media for movie logging essentially, which is pretty cool. Also, somebody did point out that I listed a movie as like a 7 out of 5 or something like that in one of the last videos, which I thought was funny, and it was like not like a great movie either, I think, so apologies for that. I mess up a little editing sometimes and talking, but anyway, let's jump into June 2020. First up is Willard from the year 2003. Now this is the remake of the 1970s, I believe, TV movie. This one stars Crispin Glover, who is sort of a interesting actor. You know, he's had some big roles, Back to the Future, of course he was in Friday the 13th Part 4. The River's Edge is another one that everybody knows him from, but he's sort of a weird dude and didn't do like a ton of stuff, so it's cool to see him in horror films too. I didn't think that I was gonna really like this one. I had seen it before and I did like it, but I just thought that, you know, maybe it was because I seen it when it came out. It's probably like a bad Platinum Dunes remake, which I'm not sure if it is Platinum Dunes, but it might be. Turns out it's actually pretty solid. Like, Crispin Glover is really good as the lead. It reminds you of almost like Norman Bates-esque, and I thought he kind of killed the role. Also, R. Lee Ermey is really good in the movie. There is some CGI with the rats and stuff like that, but I thought it was a pretty solid, you know, animal attacks type movie, a psychological horror type thing. I really enjoyed it, liked the aesthetic. Pretty good movie. It definitely surprised me. I gave that a 3.5 out of 5. And then we have Hellraiser 1987. Now, I watched this as part of the Last Drive-In. When the Last Drive-In first started, when it was brought onto Shudder, they did a 24-hour movie marathon, which I think they showed like 12 or 13 films. I stayed up the entire time and watched everything with Jeremy. We did a live stream and it was like horrible, and I didn't really remember like anything past like movie like 7. I wanted to revisit some of the ones that I barely remembered, so Hellraiser was towards the end, if not, it might have been the last one. It is definitely close to the end, if not the last one. But I actually do have all of the Last Drive-Ins, even if they're taken off of Shudder. I still have them on a hard drive for personal use, so I was able to go back and watch that, and it's fun. You know, Joe Bob is great. Hellraiser is a phenomenal movie. I used to think it was a bit overrated, but it's like one of my favorite horror films ever now, so absolutely love Hellraiser. 4.5 out of 5. Then on 22 Shots, we did a double feature OG versus remake show, and the original that we paired up with the remake is The Crazies 1973. The Crazies is a George Romero film. It is between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. I know that because Arrow put out a box set called Between Night and Dawn. But yeah, man, The Crazies kind of ahead of its time. You know, it's only 1973, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, especially considering, you know, the whole quarantine and COVID thing that happened over the past year. It definitely puts some perspective in there. George was really ahead of his time. Very brilliant filmmaker. The Crazies, it's good. I gave it a 4 out of 5. And then we have the Crazies Remake from the year 2010. Now, I expected not to like this. I had seen it before, but like a lot of remakes that I see, I think that, you know, because I seen it first before the original, I feel like I probably wouldn't like it on rewatch. But the Crazies Remake is actually pretty solid. I was shocked. It's a lot more glossy. It doesn't have that gritty 70s feel that the George film does. It still manages to be pretty good. I think that it's if you haven't seen it, or maybe you haven't seen it in a while, give it another shot. It definitely surprised me, and I think it surprised Moods and Rob and Jeremy, whoever else was on that show. I think we all kind of liked it, and I give that one a 4 out of 5. Then we have Malafiq from the year 2002. I watched this for the summer series year 2003. The way that Duncan handles his release dates made this film qualify for 2003. Malafiq is a French film that not many people have seen. It is a film that made my top 10 of 2002 back when we did that podcast. And I gotta say, man, it's a very, very, very solid movie. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's hard to find, but it is really cool. It's basically about this guy who's in a prison, and they find this, him and his cellmates find this book in the wall, and it's this black magic book, and some weird stuff starts happening. It sort of has this almost like fantasy element to it that makes it a little weird, like you're unsure what's going on. You don't see like the outside world really, so you're like kind of wondering like what era this is in and stuff like that. It's really neat. Definitely recommend checking it out if you've never seen it. It's probably one of the hidden gems that I have that not a lot of people have, I've heard, seen. I give that a 4 out of 5. Then we have Troma's War from the year 1988. I watched this as part of the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs. I've been notoriously famous, not really famous, but you know, on the podcast, people know that I always said that I didn't like Troma films. Well, things change, because over the past couple years, I've ended up liking a lot of Troma films, and I would consider myself a fan of Troma by this point, which is strange. Troma's War is not one of those films that I actually like. I think it's bloated, it's bogged down, it's kind of sloppy. Troma's usually sloppy, but it's like more sloppy. It just didn't really interest me that much. Now, I will say, Joe Bob had Lloyd Kaufman on, and his wife, and they were phenomenal. One of my favorite episodes that now that I'm thinking back on it. Just a great interview. Lloyd is awesome. You can't help but root for the guy. I mean, he's a true legend in the independent genre cinema. I mean, it's insane what the guy's been able to do, but great episode. The movie, not so much. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Then we have Right at Your Door from the year 2006. Now, this is another one of those pandemic films. You know, this sort of virus plague type thing is going around, and these people are just caught off guard with it. I thought that this one was actually really interesting. I had never even heard of it, never heard anybody talk about it. It was kind of bleak and depressing. Very good movie. If you've never seen it, definitely check it out. Obviously, like I said, with the Crazies, whenever stuff like this, you know, not to that extent, but, you know, stuff like this happens, it definitely makes you sort of look at these movies a little bit different. But yeah, it's good. I give it a 4 out of 5. Then we have House of a Thousand Corpses from the year 2003. Rob Zombie's directorial debut, his freshman effort, and it's pretty great, honestly. Like, I think that I used to have a lot of problems with it tonally, especially like in the end. I've kind of gotten over it a little bit though, and I just love the aesthetic of the movie and like this Texas Chainsaw-esque feel to it. And I know Rob Zombie has like tons of haters, and you either like him or you don't, but I personally love his films, and House of a Thousand Corpses has definitely grown on me. I love the different like scenes, like the scene where Baby and them, they're all like dressed up, and you know, they're playing the song, the like Betty Boop song. It's so cool, you know. And Otis is like so different in this one, and Tiny's cool, and Grandpa's ridiculous. Like, it's just, I really like the movie. I think that it's a great little horror film. And I would have liked to see an extended cut. I know Rob Zombie said he shot a lot more stuff that basically ended up on the cutting room floor, and I don't even know if the footage still exists, but that is 2003's House of a Thousand Corpses. I give that a 4.5 out of 5. Then we have Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 5, The Toy Maker, from the year 1991. This was part of the run through 91 that we were working on. This one is probably one of the best sequels in the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise. Most notably, it stars Mickey Rooney, who famously protested the original Silent Night, Deadly Night film. So it was always very, very interesting that he did the 5th film in the series. There's some weird stuff with this one. I think it's a little bit underappreciated. It's not a great movie by any means, but it feels like a good full moon film. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then we have Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, from the year 2019. This was fantastic. So if you've ever seen A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, you should watch this documentary. If you're an Elm Street fan, you should watch this documentary. If you haven't seen this and you're a horror fan in general, just check it out. This documentary is awesome. It follows Mark Patton, who played Jesse in Elm Street 2, and it talks about his, basically how like gay and homoerotic the Elm Street 2 was, like all these homosexual undertones, and how he was gay in real life and how it really, really impacted him. Just a great documentary, man. And I love the Elm Street films, and I love Elm Street Part 2. It's one of my favorites. So I think this documentary is awesome. It's definitely an interesting story. I'm glad it was told. I loved it. I gave that a 4 out of 5. Then we have Swallow from the year 2019, and this one was very surprising. It's sort of loose in the horror territory. It definitely has like some psychological terror going on there. But it's basically about this girl who's like has these really bad anxiety problems, and her husband or fiance is like kind of a douchebag, and there's all this pressure on her, and she begins to swallow objects like pins and like staples and stuff that you're not supposed to swallow. There's an actual disorder for it, and it just really messed with me. But overall, I think the performance by the lead was like phenomenal, and she really, really captures the anxiety and social anxieties and issues that a lot of people struggle with. They did really good job with this movie. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I watched Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, from the year 2020. This was a little documentary on Jeffrey Epstein on Netflix. I mean, man, I don't even know what to say about this. Like, it's unfortunate. It's messed up. It really, really puts in perspective like how money equals power, right? Like 100%. Like, this guy was just something else, man. Just insane. Like, the stories that these girls tell and stuff, I mean, it's just nuts. But it was really good. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then we have Old Boy from the year 2003. This was also part of the summer series. Now, I don't really think Old Boy is a horror film. I tried to make that argument. I was shut down pretty hard on the summer series. Everybody loves this movie, including me. I just don't think it's a horror film. Park Chan-wook, part of the Vengeance trilogy. This is the second film? Is it the second film? Yeah, because Lady Vengeance was 2005 and Symphony for Mr. Vengeance was 2002. I like all three. Old Boy is what people consider the best one. I'm not sure if I feel that way. I might like Lady Vengeance a little bit more, but Old Boy, very good. Very cool twist. A lot of interesting stuff in there. It's just a well done movie. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. And then we have A Tale of Two Sisters from the year 2003. Pretty solid Asian ghost film. Very, very prevalent of the time. You know, post-Ring. It was just like so many of these things. And this one's pretty good. Definitely one of the better ones. Pretty scary. I would like to see it on like Blu-ray. The DVD that I watched was not the best quality. But great movie. That is a 4 out of 5. Then we have Ju-on, The Grudge from the year 2002. I think we counted this for 2003 based on the rules for Duncan's Summer Series thing. It's honestly like I've always thought it wasn't that good, and I still am not like crazy about it. I don't think it's like as good as some people make it out to be, but I definitely enjoyed it more this watch. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then still going with the Summer Series 2003, which is funny because it's currently July right now, and I'm actually working on the Summer Series right now in real life. So it's funny going through last year's Summer Series. But yeah, we have High Tension 2003, aka the better title, Switchblade Romance. Even though both titles are pretty good, and High Tension actually fits as well, so they're both good. I just like the sound of Switchblade Romance. So High Tension, I think it's an amazing movie. I really do. People often talk about the ending and how it doesn't make sense. It actually does make sense. You just have to pay attention. Yes, what you're seeing happen couldn't happen, but that is part of the story because it's basically an unreliable narrator story. So take that for what it is. I think it's great. It's an awesome French film. It's part of the French extreme new wave that happened in the mid 2000s-ish. 4.5 out of 5. Then we have Identity 2003. This is like more of a thriller, but there are some horror elements in it. Really good cast. Super sort of underrated film. It's a mystery. It's an interesting mystery. It feels like something like Agatha Christie or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good movie. Definitely worth watching if you've never seen it. This was the second time or third time I've seen it, and it's very enjoyable. It kind of wraps you in. And I give that one a 4 out of 5. Then I watched The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03, the remake. And I think this movie is so good. It does not get the love it deserves. My favorite film of all time is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not A Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. My favorite film, 1974, favorite film, absolutely love it. It's my favorite horror movie. So if anybody should be mad at a remake, it's me. But I love the remake like just as much, not just as much, but I love it a lot. It's like one of my favorite horror movies too. I just think it's great. There's really nothing that I don't like about it. It works so well for me. Every scene's good. Arlie Ermy fits right in with the family, right? Like you think of Chop Top, you think of the cook, you think of even the people in like part 3 and even 4. And you're telling me Arlie Ermy isn't related to them? He feels just like them, just part of the family. So yeah, it's a great movie. Love it. 5 out of 5. And then I went to the drive-in and I watched a triple feature. My drive-in started playing a lot of classic movies at the drive-in since they were able to open up again. And the first one was Back to the Future 1985. One of my all-time favorite movies. I love Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. I love Doc Brown. Of course, Christopher Lloyd. It's just a fun movie. I notice stuff every time I watch it, even though that's starting to slow down. Like maybe it's like every couple times I watch it I pick up new things, but for the most part it's just a phenomenal movie. Love it. 5 out of 5. Then we watched Back to the Future Part 2 from the year 1989, and again, man, Back to the Future 2 is a solid follow-up. Like I love it. Sometimes I even prefer it over the original. Like it's just fun, you know. They go to the future, Jaws 19, Griff. It's just stupid, but it's stupid in a good way too. The sports almanac, This one feels bigger. I love that about it. I love the dystopian future from the sports almanac and stuff like that, where Biff is controlling everything. It's funny. I give that one a 5 out of 5 too. And then we have Back to the Future Part 3 from the year 1990. A lot of people don't like this one. I love it. I think it's great. I love the Old West setting. It's the most different from the first two, even though there are a lot of similarities. This one sort of is Doc Brown's story, which is a lot of fun because he's more prominent in this one. There's a lot of things to love about Back to the Future Part 3. I think people just are kind of annoyed that it's a Western, but I think it's great. And I love the role reversal between Doc and Marty. Like, all of a sudden, Marty's the one thinking with his head, and Doc's the one thinking with his heart. I give that one a 5 out of 5 too. And I'm not sure why, but for some reason I started watching the Puppet Master movies. Puppet Master from the year 1989. This movie takes forever to get going, but once it gets going, there is some fun stuff there, like the Leech Woman kill, Tunneler's cool. There's some good stuff. It just takes forever to get there. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have Puppet Master 2 from the year 1990. This one is definitely the better of the Puppet Master series, and the funny thing about this one is if you take all the Puppet Master movies, which I think there are, 12 or so now. If you take them all and put them chronologically in terms of storyline, Puppet Master 2 is the very last film. It's the last one, which is funny because it's only the second movie, because the timeline is a mess with those films. But yeah, Puppet Master 2, unless we're counting Demonic Toys, that technically might be the Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys. But I know that's technically not canon. But if it was, it might go after Puppet Master 2. Anyway, the movie is definitely an improvement. It's still not great, but I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then we have Outback from the year 2019. This movie wasn't very good. I thought it was going to be like this cool survival horror type thing. It just was a bit messy, not really worth it. 2 out of 5. Then we have Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge from the year 1991. I probably watched the first two because of the fact that 1991 was the year we were prepping for, and Puppet Master 3 run through 91. So maybe I wanted to revisit the first two before I got to the third one. Either way, the third Puppet Master film is the best in the series. Maybe besides The Littlest Reich, the newest one, which isn't canon with the Full Moon series. Puppet Master 3 is awesome. It feels the biggest. It has the best sets. It's the best looking, best puppets, stuff like that. I mean, 6-shooter's awesome. It's great. It's a great movie. Probably one of the best Full Moon films. It's a 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Speed from the year 1994. Me and Carly on His and Hers Movie Podcast was doing this thing where we were watching movies that were unseen to us. It was like, I forget what we called it. But basically popular movies that neither of us, that I haven't seen or she hasn't seen. I give her a list, she gave me a list. And Speed was on her list, but I decided to watch it anyway. I absolutely love Speed. It's one of my favorite action films. I think that it's like perfect and like what an action film should be. Keanu Reeves is really fun. Dennis Hopper is a maniac, which is always good for like a villain an action film to have like a crazy villain. Really cool movie. 4 out of 5. And then we have Red, White, and Blue from the year 2010. This movie is a gut punch. It's a rough one to watch, but it's very, very interesting, very well done. Very interesting stories. It kept getting like worse and worse. But if you've never seen it, for sure see it. It's definitely a disturbing movie. 4.5 out of 5. And then we have The Haunted 1991. Again with the run through 91, still doing the prep for the top 10 show. It's a good movie. It's, I think, a TV movie. It has some scary moments in it. I was definitely invested. I like stuff like this. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have There's Nothing Out There from the year 1991. This is a like spoof type movie. Very fun. I really like it. It's a trauma film. I think that it's a little underseen. It's a good one. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have The Goonies 1985. This was one that I watched at the drive-in. I've seen it in the theater before, but I was happy to actually be able to go see it at the drive-in. Rest in peace to Richard Donner, died recently, which is very sad. The Goonies is my favorite movie of all time, like non-horror. It's just amazing. Like it's so easy to watch. I could watch it at any time. Always been a huge fan. 5 out of 5. They did a double feature of The Goonies and Beetlejuice from the year 1988 at the drive-in. Beetlejuice is awesome. Carly had never seen it before, so it was really interesting to watch it with her for the first time at the drive-in. Tim Burton classic. I used to watch it all the time when I was a kid, to the point where I got burnt out on it and like didn't really care for it. But then like a long time later as an adult, I rediscovered it and realized how much I love it. 4.5 out of 5. Then we have The Crawlers from the year 1991, which is a Killer Root movie. It's also known as Troll 3 in some territories. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid, but I've always loved it. I actually had it on a VHS tape, like recorded off the TV with Jason Goes to Hell, and I used to watch those two all the time. I never knew what the movie was called. It's also called Contamination Point 7, but I think it's a super fun movie. It's so cheesy and stupid, but I enjoy it. Then we have Hellbound Hellraiser 2 from the year 1988. This was a last drive-in watch. It was really cool that Joe Bob actually did the sequel a few years later. Very good stuff, very enjoyable. Hellraiser 2 is like just as strong as Hellraiser 1 to me. I absolutely love it. 5 out of 5. Then we have Hiroku the Goblin from the year 1991. This one was a weird one. A little bit hard to find these days. I think Fangoria might have had something to do with its original release, like back in the day on like VHS or early DVD or something, but I'm not 100% sure. At least maybe in different territories, but very, very weird. I think it might be Japanese. Strange movie. It needs a like Blu-ray in the US. That would be pretty cool. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Ernest Scared Stupid from the year 1991. Ernest is fun. I love Ernest. He's an awesome character. I would love to see a million Ernest movies. I think that he's great. So Ernest Scared Stupid's really fun. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Basket Case from the year 1982. I decided to watch the last drive-in version, which was part of that original 24-hour marathon that I live streamed to and could barely remember anything, so I figured I would rewatch that one since I plan on watching the other Basket Case films. Basket Case is a favorite horror film of mine. Frank Henenlotter, I got to meet him once. Super awesome dude. Basket Case is pretty damn amazing. Love it. And yeah, I mean, it's gritty, grimy, New York, good stuff. 4 out of 5. Then we have Basket Case 2 from the year 1990. Definitely a step down for me. I really don't care for the Basket Case sequels all that much. I think that it's like, I don't know, it's just like, they don't have the same tone. They're much more goofy and not as serious of a horror film. And I just feel like they kind of lost their way a little bit. And even Dwayne doesn't really feel like the same character. I don't know. It's alright. Nothing amazing. I give it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have Followed from the year 2018. Now I think this movie is supposed to be based on like the Cecil Hotel, or like that story of the girl. I think like Dark Waters based on that too. That girl that like disappears in the elevator or whatever. It's something like that. I saw this at the drive-in. I thought it was horrible. It's like a found footage film, I think, from my memory. It's not good. 1.5 out of 5. I have heard some people say they liked it though. Then we have The Pit and the Pendulum from the year 1991. This is a story based on the Edgar Allan Poe short story. Directed by Stuart Gordon, and one of Full Moon's best films. It's a period piece. It's honestly pretty great. It's a really, I think Lance Henriksen's in there. Very good movie. Very good. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Athlete A from the year 2020, which is basically a story of how a lot of the Olympic gymnastics team was sexually assaulted during their youth by people on the Olympic committee or work for the Olympics, which is horrifying and horrible. And if there's one thing I saw while watching athlete A, it's like, dude, Olympic gymnastics are like insane. Like, these girls are amazing. Like, truly, truly mind blown at the stuff they could do. And it's very sick and disturbing that this happened to them. And hopefully that never happens again. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was a Netflix documentary. Pretty good, though. Then I started prepping on the 2008 version of the summer series with Cloverfield from 2008. This is a found footage film that I think is pretty damn awesome. A, like, sort of Godzilla kaiju found footage thing. It really made me think, like, dude, they honestly maybe should do a found footage Godzilla. Like, it could work. Cloverfield's awesome. I love the setup. It starts really fast and it doesn't let up. I think it's a great movie. 4 out of 5. Then we have The Strangers 2008. Definitely a movie that never was like my favorite. Like Jeremy, it's like one of his favorite movies, and Mr. Watson, it's one of his favorite movies. But I definitely respect it. Brian Bertino, he's been doing a lot of good stuff over the years. The Strangers, scary, like slow paced, good stuff. It's a good movie. 4 out of 5. Then we have one of my favorite films of last year that's not a horror film, and that is The King of Staten Island from the year 2020. Pete Davidson in a sort of like, I don't know, like finding yourself type movie. Like, I wouldn't say coming of age because he's like old, but it's like coming into your own type thing, and you know, dealing with like loss and stuff like that, and being a screw up. Like, it was honestly a very relatable movie. Like, it reminded me of me when I was like, you know, in my early 20s. But very, very good, funny movie. I really enjoyed it. I gave that a 4.5 out of 5. Then we have The Uninvited 2009. We were supposed to do a OG versus remake for The Tale of Two Sisters and The Uninvited on the podcast, and we never got around to actually recording that episode. It just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. The Uninvited, it was alright. It was not as good as The Tale of Two Sisters, but you kind of expect that. I still thought it was like, you know, semi decent. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have The Ruins from the year 2008, and of course, this was the film that I tried to push a little bit in the summer series because I do think that it's a really solid movie. It's very gory, it's disturbing, it's a contained horror film. I just think that it's like, for Killer Plant, like I mentioned the crawlers earlier, like The Ruins is the way to do Killer Plants. You know, some rough CGI, but I just think it's like a really well acted, like survival horror film that gets under my skin. So yeah, I give it a 4 out of 5. And then finally for June we have Basket Case 3 from the year 1991. And again, I'm not like the biggest fan of the Basket Case sequels. I do think that Basket Case 3 might be a little bit better than Basket Case 2. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, they're a little bit too goofy for me, just not what I would want out of my Basket Case films. They're my least favorite Henenlotter movies, Basket Case 2 and 3. Like, I much prefer Brain Damage, Basket Case, even Frankenhooker and Bad Biology. Because I feel like those films should be, you know, Frankenhooker and Bad Biology should be a little goofy. I don't feel like Basket Case 1 is goofy. It's just, it's strange. But and maybe a little cheesy, but it's definitely not goofy. So that's why I like the first one so much more than the sequels. But I give it a 3 out of 5. Not too bad. Anyways, so that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. We'll see you next time with July, and we could go down the other side of the mountain as we wrap up this series. I would like to have this done by October, because obviously I'm going to be busy in October. Got something exciting plan this year for 31 Days of Horror, but more on that later. Hope you guys enjoy. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of these films. Let me know what you think of anything that I had to say. I love your feedback. Love reading it. It's like anytime I get a comment, I'm like, yes, comment. Awesome. I love comments. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Later.